Hello guys, today we are going to discuss about the Spring Framework. So let's have a look what is the Spring Framework, what are the features is there in the Spring Framework. Okay, there are many features of a Spring Framework which we are going to discuss. Before discussing the Spring Framework features or their features, or we are going to discuss the topics which is going to be covered in the Spring Framework. We'll discuss why the Spring Framework is too important and why the organization or the companies are demanding the Spring Framework. Okay, so if we compare an applications which we have not, we created some applications where we have not used a Spring Framework, which we created without the Spring Framework. So what was the like a drawback, or we can say the problems was there. There was a problem like it was taking a lots of time to complete that application. Why? Because we need to write each and every code by ourselves. We have to write each and every functionality by ourselves. And if like we want to make any changes, so it is a little bit difficult if we are going to compare it with a Spring, okay, by using a Spring applications. So when we are going to create an application by a Spring, it is too faster. It reduces the complexities. Okay, it makes it is going to be used and it will create an easily but the applications. So we will learn that things also how it is going to do that thing. Okay, so as we are going to discuss the Spring Framework, before that I just, because by using the Spring Framework we are going to create an applications which is an enterprise applications. So before the Spring Framework, there was a EJP which we was using for enterprise applications. Okay, what was the problem with the EJP? The problem in the EJP was because it was again it was the app. EJP was an enterprise Java Bean applications. Okay, which was helping us to create an application by using an this enterprise applications. But what was the problem with that? It was heavy weighted applications. What do you mean by the heavy weighted? So we have a systems, okay, operating system. So it needs some libraries. It was depending on some of the libraries of the system. So it was depending on the, so EJP is dependent on the libraries, okay, of your the system libraries. So that's why when we require to create an application, so it is depending on the system libraries. It needs some license also. So in EJP we require the license also. So in EJPs we require the license. So we will not get this applications on like libraries. We will not get in from a net. It's not an open source. It's what exactly? It's depending on the systems. It requires some license. So and if we created an application by using the enterprise Java Bean, the thing is that the application is bit complex if we are going to compare it with the Spring. So when we created an application by using an enterprise Java Bean application, it's a bit complex while if we comparing it with the Spring. So what is here? We just, this is just the introduction. We are not going to go deep into the EGP. So we find EGP is requiring some libraries. EGP requires some of the libraries. It requires some of the license. It's having some of the complexities of the code, and there are some given methods. We need there are some implementations already defined. Okay, so we have to follow that implementations. That's what we are going to say about EGP. Now, if we compare EGP with our Spring. Okay, so Spring Framework is what exactly? So Spring Framework is open source. It's a framework. Okay, so what is this? It's a light-weighted application. That means there is no dependency on the system library. The first thing which we are going to say is it's a light-weighted application. Okay, so if I say the light-weighted application, that means we don't have to dependency on any of the things like on the system libraries. We don't require. It's a open source. Open source means to say we will get all the libraries, all the jars, all the required dependencies from the we don't need to buy it, we don't need to get some license for that. We will download it directly from the internet and we can use it. It's openly available, so you don't need to you don't need to go and buy the license for that libraries. You don't need to do anything. Okay, so now it's the main important thing is in the Spring is it's a loosely coupled application. So if it's a loosely coupled application, which means there is a list, there is no dependency on each of the classes. Might be, you know, in case of your the core Java stuff, what do you mean by the loosely coupled and what do you mean by the tightly coupled application? Where there is a dependency on the other classes, we called it as a tightly coupled. When there is no dependency on any other classes, so we called it as a loosely coupled application. So in Spring application, whenever we are going to create an application, it creates an application which is a loosely coupled application. Okay, it's a lightweighted, it's a open source application. We can create an application as a loosely coupled application, and Spring application is easy and scalable. Okay, so we have some of the features. So Spring is easy and scalable. So when we are going to create an application, so by using a Spring, so Spring is easy and scalable. Okay, so these are some of the features which we discussed about that. And on top of this, Spring can be used with different frameworks. So we used to call it as a Spring is a frameworks of frameworks also. So now who has when we created a Spring application, we know that Spring application is now lightweighted application, it's an open source application, it's a loosely coupled application. On top of that, it's a scalable and it's very easy application. Spring is a easy and sorry, my typo. So it's a easy and the scalable application. So when we are going to create an application by using a Spring, so definitely it's very easy. Now let us discuss why it is very easy for us and how it is going to make our faster in the development, how makes and how it reduces the complexities. Because Spring is going to provide us their own APIs, their own classes. So it has their own APIs because it's a framework. So framework means to say, or the half of the code is given by this Spring framework, and we have to just write our business logic over there. Okay, so you have your own methods. Spring is going to provide the methods, Spring is going to provide the classes, Spring is going to provide the half of the code is going to be provided by the Spring framework, and now we have to only concentrate on writing our stuff which is our business logic. So we don't need to write each and everything over here. So definitely it will be the easier and it will make my application so faster. Why? Because we have half of the things written by the Spring framework. So this is how it is going to make my application so faster. Correct. Now let's go to the Spring features. Okay, how it makes a simple, like if I'm gonna to say it's so easy and it makes my application so simple. We here in the Spring we are gonna to use Pojo classes. Okay, we are following the Pojos and we can use a Poji. What is the Pojo and what is the Poji? Poji is the plain old Java interface and this is a plain old Java object. So we are going to use these things into our application to make it very simple, to make it very easy. How we can use it, we will see in the while we will discuss any application while we are going to create an Spring application. We will definitely discuss that thing over here. Okay, so this is like a simple things, and before the things like we are going to further discuss about the Spring, let us have a look the history of the Spring. Okay, so the Spring has been introduced in 2002 by the Rod Johnson. So Rod Johnson is the like a computer specialist who has first developed this in 2002, but at that time the name of the Spring was not Spring, it was Interface 21. What was the name of that? It was interface 21. So initially when spring was introduced, okay, in 2002, the name was interface 21. But after then, when 2003, in 2003 when the spring was introduced into the market, okay, at that time they all had there was a team of specialists. They has introduced many more like features into the spring, and they find that in what was the actually they introduced this spring in the winter. Okay, so they find the winter season is not good in the Australia, so they find that okay, in 2003 they named it as a spring. Okay, so because after the winter the spring season is there, and they find the spring season is better, so they gave the name to the this application as a spring application. So this is what exactly the history of your spring.